All right, so you know how we love to really get into some books around here?
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to deep dive into Apples Never Fall. That's one by Liane Moriarty. You know her, right? Big Little Lies and all that. So if you're into family dramas with, like a little bit of mystery swirling around, then
It's
this one
fun.
might just be your jam. But
Before you go adding it to that to be read pile, let's see if it's really worth your time. Yeah.
yeah, and this one is actually pretty interesting because our critic for this one, she actually DNF'd it, did not finish, but she did watch the miniseries, and she ended up really liking that. So that's kind of the mystery we're going to unpack today. Why would someone not finish the book but love this show?
Okay, so we're starting off with a bit of a mixed bag then, I'm curious. What even made her pick up Apples Never Fall in the first place?
I think it was the premise, you know?
Huh?
Like a lot of Moriarty fans, the Goodreads description talks about this like seemingly perfect family, the Delaneys, and they've got this successful tennis academy, 4 grown kids. Everything seems, pretty idyllic until the mother Joy just disappears one day. Okay, yeah, that sounds like classic family drama stuff right there. So where does the whole mystery part come into play?
Well, the suspicion falls on the father's stand pretty quickly, but it's not just a simple whodunit. The book goes into all the family relationships and how they all react when Joy vanishes.
Ah, so it's more like a why done it then,
Yeah.
with that extra emphasis on the messy family stuff that Moriarty is so good at.
Exactly. But this is where things get kind of interesting. The critic in her well-read Tart blog, she mentioned that even though she was into the Delaneys and all the drama, the pace of the book, it really threw her off. It took way too long for anything to really happen.
Yeah, I can see how that would be frustrating, especially for like mystery or thriller readers. You
Yeah.
kind of expect things to move along.
Mm.
Was there something specific about how Moriarty wrote it that made it feel so slow?
Yeah, she said Moriarty really goes all in on the descriptions, especially the characters' thoughts and memories, so it's like super character driven, which some people love,
Yeah.
but it can definitely slow down the plot.
So if you're looking for a book that you just can't put down, this might not be the one. But if you're into Moriarty's style, like all the witty observations and really getting to know the characters, it could still be worth checking out.
Yeah, exactly. It depends what you're looking for as a reader.
Okay, but here's what I don't get. If this critic found the book so slow that she didn't even finish it, why would she watch the miniseries? Like, what made her think that would be any better?
Yeah, that's a good question. In her blog post, she admitted to flipping to the end, just out of pure frustration. But even then, the ending wasn't interesting enough to make her want to wade through another 200 pages. But then something about the show caught her attention. Maybe because it's more visual, or maybe just plain curiosity. Like, how would they adapt this story?
I guess that shows you how powerful visuals can be. Sometimes seeing the story play out on screen is just more engaging, especially if the book is really heavy on the descriptions, like you
Yeah.
said.
Right. And in this case, the critic actually thought the miniseries did a much better job with all the family drama. It was more streamlined and really showed the impact of Joy's disappearance.
So the miniseries sounds like a good choice if you want something more compact and focused on the emotions, whereas the book really goes deep into the characters' minds, but at a much slower pace.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It actually makes you think about how different ways of telling a story can change how we understand it. Like maybe the miniseries makes viewers see the events differently than if they read the book.
That is fascinating. It's almost like there are 2 versions of the story, each with their own good and bad points.
Ah.
Okay, so without any spoilers, how did the critic describe the ending of the show? Did it make up for the book not really grabbing her?
She still thought the ending was a bit meh in terms of the mystery, but she said it made her realize that the story isn't really about who did it. It's more about how the family reacts to Joy's disappearance and all their secrets and guilt.
Okay, so it's more of a character-driven story then,
Yeah.
with a mystery that might not be as exciting as some people would hope. But what about Moriarty's sense of humor? Is that still there in both the book and the miniseries?
Oh, totally. A lot of the Goodreads reviewers mentioned the dark humor. And the critic did too. Like there's the scene where the Delaney kids are arguing about whether or not they should report their mom missing, and this waitress overhears them and immediately thinks it's the father.
Huh. That's so Moriarty. Finding humor in the darkest places.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why the critic, even though she wasn't crazy about the book, ended up enjoying both versions of the story.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just trying to figure out if Apples Never Fall is good or bad. We're looking at how different ways of experiencing a story, like reading versus watching, and different people's expectations can shape how much we enjoy it.
That's a great point. I think we need to let that sink in for a second. And when we come back, Let's dig a little deeper into what makes Apples Never Fall stand out and compare it to some of Moriarty's other books to see how it measures up. Stick with us.
Okay, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about how Apples Never Fall is a bit of a different experience for readers and viewers, with the slow mystery and all that focus on the characters.
Right, and I was thinking it might be helpful to compare it to some of Moriarty's other books, like, Big Little Lies or The Husband's Secret. Those have family drama too, but they're also way more plot-driven. Things happen faster, and the mystery is front and center. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. And that could be why the critic we talked about, the one who didn't finish the book, found Apples Never Fall so frustrating. It's just a different kind of read. You got to be patient and really want to get inside the characters' heads.
So for people who've read other Moriarty books, would you say Apples Never Fall is like totally different or more like just taking your usual style further?
I think it's kind of both. She still has that sharp wit and her observations about families, but this one goes even deeper into how complicated those relationships can be. It's more introspective.
Yeah, I'm starting to get why the critic preferred the miniseries. It sounds like they really focused on the emotional side of things, but it's interesting that even in the show, the ending wasn't that shocking for her.
That's true. And that tells us something important about Apples Never Fall. The mystery is there, but it's not the main point. It's more like a starting point to explore these bigger themes like family and secrets and the choices we make. It's almost like the real mystery is the characters themselves.
So if someone is really into those twisty thrillers, where you're guessing the whole time, this one might not be for them. But if you enjoy stories that really dig into the characters and all the messiness of relationships, then it could be a good pick.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It's not about the ending so much as the journey of getting there. And that brings us back to why our critic stopped reading the book but liked the miniseries. Maybe it was just the pacing. Or maybe it's something deeper about how we connect with stories, depending on whether we read them or watch them.
Yeah, maybe. It could even be about how powerful adaptations can be. Like taking a story and giving it a whole new life in a different form. It's crazy to think that the same story can make people feel so differently, depending on if they read it or watch it.
Exactly. And that's why these deep dives are so cool. We're not just summarizing or reviewing, we're really getting into how stories work, like the relationship between the author and the story and the audience, and hopefully helping our listeners choose what they want to read or watch.
Absolutely. So for anyone out there who's still not sure about Apples Never Fall, let's move on to our recommendations. What are the biggest things to think about when deciding whether to check out this particular Moriarty story? All right, so we've talked a lot about Apples Never Fall, the mystery, the family drama, the facts that our critic liked the show better. So the big question is it worth your time?
I think it comes down to what kind of reader you are. Like if you're a huge Liane Moriarty fan and you love her style, the wit cherry stuff, you'll probably enjoy Apples Never Fall, even if it's a bit slower than her other books.
So for the Moriarty fans, it's probably a yes. But what about people who haven't read any of her stuff before? Would you recommend this one as their first Moriarty book?
I'd actually say start with something more plot-driven, like Big Little Lies or The Husband's Secret. Those are a bit more fast-paced and have a stronger mystery element, which might be better if you're not familiar with her writing yet.
Right. It's like when you try a new restaurant. You probably want to order their most popular dishes first before you try the more unusual stuff.
Exactly. And then if you really like Moriarty's writing and how she creates characters, then Apples Never Fall could be a good next step. It goes deeper into the kind of themes she usually explores.
And we've also talked about the miniseries, which seems like a more condensed version of the story, with a bigger focus on the emotional stuff. Would you say that's a good alternative for people who aren't sure about reading the book?
Oh, for sure. The miniseries is perfect if you want something visual and to the point. It gets the family drama and the impact of Joy's disappearance across really well, even if it doesn't go into as much detail about the character's thoughts as the book does.
So basically, you have a few options for Apples Never Fall. You can read the book if you want to really get to know the characters, watch the miniseries for a quicker, more emotional experience, or maybe even do both to see the story from different angles.
Right. In the end, it's about what you're looking for, what kind of reading or watching experience you want to have. And we always encourage our listeners to trust their own tastes and embrace all the different ways stories can be told.
Well said. Hopefully this deep dive has given you a better feel for Apples Never Fall and helped you decide if it's something you want to check out. Don't forget to look at the show notes for links to the critic's blog, the Goodreads reviews we mentioned, And, of course, links to Liane Moriarty's other books. And let us know what you think. If you've read Apples Never Fall or seen the show, we'd love to hear your reactions. What stuck with you? What surprised you? What left you wanting more? Until next time, happy reading, happy watching, and keep those pages turning.